and then we get straight on with the business. Members of the public wishing to listen and watch the meeting may attend in person in the council chamber. Live stream is offered, etc., etc. Members of the public are entitled to take photographs, film, audio, record, and report on all public meetings in accordance with the openness of local government bodies regulation 2014. People may not, however, act in any way considered to be disruptive and may be asked to leave. Emergency evacuation procedure from the council chamber. Follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at St George's Square. Any apologies for absence tonight?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Raja. Thank you.
And Councillor Alia Khan may attend at some point. She's on her way from London. Okay, the minutes of the 24th of September. Okay to sign them? Happy with them? Section 106, the Local Government Finance Act. Any disclosure of interest tonight? Yes.
Chair, this is one I could probably do some guidance on. So it's in relation to agenda item 8. As Chair of Children's Services Review Group Scrutiny, I know that scrutiny isn't usually a declarable interest. However, in relation to this particular application, it involves, without going into too many details at this point, it involves obviously a clear decision in terms of going against the Luton local plan and sort of voting in that direction. And then if I were to vote against that and against this, then I feel that I would maybe somehow be indirectly the cause of possibly, if you say, performance issues in relation to the school provision that I've indirectly caused by potentially voting against this, if you know what I mean. So I feel that I've got a bit of a conflict here. I don't know whether it's a declarable one or so whether I can stay in the debate and if I were to be minded to abstain. I just appreciate some guidance on that.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a new one, I think. So I'm going to try and break it down and say yes or no kind of answers, if you like, even though you've used the word indirect, which my ears pricked up to. Have you been involved in this application, item 8, that's before us tonight?
No.
Have you made any comments on this item, either in relation to the capacity you were just talking about or in relation to a ward member you're shaking? No. Okay. But you believe there is an indirect relationship with the scrutiny board you are on. Can you explain that a bit more for me?
Yes, in terms of obviously I hold the departments that will be responsible for this school potentially to account in their their performance as chair of scrutiny.
A school that doesn't yet exist, yeah?
A school that doesn't yet exist, yeah. So sort of the Luton Children's Services Department may not be able to meet certain things if I were to vote against this, if that makes sense.
I get that. Okay, hang on a sec. I'm just going to look at my notes from a few years ago. The analogy I'm thinking of, which I've got on my notes, relates to sort of if you're a school governor, but that's controlling mind. You're not, and you know what I mean by that, and for everyone else, are you part of the decision-making process? And you said no. Similarly, does it directly affect any of your registrable interests? It doesn't, because, for example, you're not talking about being a school governor here, and that would be on your register of interests. No, I don't think it doesn't directly relate to financial well-being of you or anyone else. I don't believe it's a non-registrable personal interest. Indirectly relates to a body that you do give advice upon. Well, not advice. Advice is that the right word? Yeah. Hold them to account. I would say at best, it would be I say best, personal interest, but not prejudicial in terms of the reasonable observer looking in. That would be my advice. I know the way you're talking, you're a bit umming and ahhing. It's obviously your decision to make. Forgive me for the rest of the chamber. I need to ask these questions to try and elicit what we're actually dealing with here, because it's new to me tonight. I would. My advice, I think, would be personal because of the overarching body that you're on that deals with school performance across the board. Tell me if I'm missing anything here, but certainly not prejudicial, because I don't believe it. I don't think a reasonable observer looking in would think that means that you can't make a decision on this planning application based on that indirect relationship of accountability and performance.
Okay, that's fine. I understand it's my decision, but I'm happy to go with kind of that. Based on that guidance, I'll declare it as a personal interest only. Yeah.
Yes, councillor.
I'd like to declare an interest in item 7, in so much as I'm a ward councillor for that site, and I have spoken to constituents and they've spoken to me, but it's been basically on the procedures and how they can object and this sort of thing, rather than expressing opinions to them.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Thanks for the heads up. It's good to be transparent and let us know, but that isn't an interest. It would only be an interest, for example, if you'd spoken to people in your constituency and then given an absolute view as to, yes, I agree, I'm not going to vote on this, or yes, I'm definitely going to vote for it, and then that would be predetermination. But just speaking about procedure, it's good that you've let people know, but there's no interest there whatsoever. Okay, but thank you.
Chair, sorry, just on going back to item 8 again, I was wondering about this because the applicant is the council. So in a way, we've all the members have got an interest. Can you just explain how that kind of works?
Yeah, the simple way of putting it is those kind of issues are only going to be personal. I'm going to use simple language. I think personal and prejudicial interests, if they affect your financial or other type of well-being, either positively or negatively. Yes, it affects the council. If you were I'll use the example I used with Councillor Bridget. If you were a school governor, for example, or if you were involved in the actual processing of this application, part of the controlling mind of the application, rather than in this chamber, you're the controlling mind of the local planning authority. There is a distinction between the two, but I get your point. It is a council application. But if that was the case, there are a number of council applications and you'd never be able to make a decision on them either. So there has to be a distinction.
Sorry, that was more just for my interest, but following on from Councillor Virgin's sort of question. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's probably better to seek advice before the meeting rather than when the meeting is just about to start. And then Stephen's got time to think about it and take up references, and then we can deal with it swiftly. Okay, but you're still entitled to declare an interest. But if your conscience is pricking you, then you know exactly what to do. Okay, let's go straight on to agenda. No, I've got to go through the procedure first. We've done declaration of interest. Any urgent business? Not aware of any. References to committees and other bodies? Not aware of it. So we'll go straight on to agenda item 7, page 9 to 51. Escape Works, Sunderland Park Road. David Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Members. An update sheet has been circulated which details amendments to some of the conditions. In addition, comments have been received from one of the objectors. The letter detailing these comments has been circulated to members. It's proposed to deal with the matters raised as part of this presentation. Before doing so, I propose to run through the nature of this application. This is a full planning application which seeks permission for the erection of industrial, storage and distribution buildings, use classes B2, B8, EG2 and EG3, including ancillary offices, car parking, yard and circulation space, and associated works utilising access point of Sundon Park Road. If I could have the first slide, please. The application site comprises the former SKF ball bearing factory at Sundon Park Road. The site is outlined red, and a full description of the site is set out in paragraphs 3 to 8 of the report. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows the site's current layout and its location in relation to the surrounding commercial development. As set out in the report, the application site is situated within a Category A employment area. The next slide, please. This slide provides details of the proposed layout, which comprises five blocks of development. During the course of the application, the access arrangements were altered such that the primary access to the site, namely to all of the units, would be from Sundon Park Road via an internal spine road. This arrangement mimics the historic access arrangements to the site. If I could have the next slide, please. If I can run quickly through the various units. Unit 100 is the frontage unit with the main area of activity, the circulation area, within the site on the northern elevation. We could have the next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed elevations, with that on the bottom left being the frontage elevation to Sundon Park Road. I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows Unit 100, which provides a similar layout with the primary access from the unit onto the spine road as described. There is a secondary access to the northeast of this part of the site. I could have the next slide, please. This slide details the elevational treatment to Unit 200. Next slide, please. Moving into the western part of the site, this shows the first of the proposals for the rear of the site. Unit 300, again, would provide a similar format as the other units. The next slide, please. This slide shows the elevations for Unit 300. The next slide, please. This slide shows the 5 smaller units, Units 400 and 500, and the proposed layout. And the next 2 slides show the elevational treatment to Unit 400 and to Unit 500. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows a typical floor plan comprising the building shell and ancillary floor space. This layout is typical to all units and shows the ancillary office uses at right angles to the main floor plan. We could have the next slide, please. This slide and the one that follows provides a visualization of the proposed development, showing how it fits in to the surrounding development. The matters against which this application falls to be considered are set out in detail in paragraph 26 of the report, with these matters considered in further detail in paragraphs 27 to 122. The principle of development is acceptable. The redevelopment of the existing employment site for new employment generating use, utilizing the site more intensively, is considered to be acceptable in principle. Additionally, there are tangible economic and employment benefits which would flow from the site's redevelopment. Insofar as matters of scale and appearance, layout and landscaping are concerned, it is considered that the development would result in a well-designed development integrating into the existing pattern of development, providing a modern uplift to meet market demands of flexibility. In terms of the more technical responses, ecology and biodiversity net gain and flood risk, drainage and highways, these are all satisfactorily addressed. Matters of noise, air quality, lighting, contamination, energy and sustainability are addressed via conditions, and there are no objections in this respect. I now turn to the third-party representations. In the main, the matters set out in paragraphs 116 to 122 are addressed in the report. However, As set out in the update sheet, a letter has been received from one of the objectors, which has been circulated to members. Before responding to the matters raised, I would just say that the matter of the use of the non-adopted part of Dencora Way and the rights of way that obtain in respect thereof are a matter between the applicant and the objector. The letter advises that the objection relates specifically to the proposed use of Dencora Way to provide access to the proposed service yard. The letter concedes that the access already exists, and indeed it is to be retained as secondary access. This was highlighted earlier, is a variation from the originally submitted application, which now proposes primary access from Sundon Park Road to Unit 200 via the Spine Road. It is a fact that when the council's highway engineer considered the details originally submitted, he raised no objections to the use from Dencora Way to access Unit 200 in terms of its suitability. It is, however, noted that the variation now proposed provides access from the Spine Road, and this is preferred. The point is made in the letter that this access only serves a car park. The car park was used ancillary to the primary use of the site by SKF in the manufacture of ball bearings, and it could, of course, have been used without any material operations in any capacity ancillary to the primary use of the site. The matter of a shortfall of car parking has been raised. There are no objections on highway grounds from the council's highway engineer to the extent of the car parking proposed for the development. The use of Dencora Way is described as a potential rat run. This is cited as of concern. A rat run is a term used for using side streets or other minor routes as a shortcut to avoid congestion on main roads. On the basis of this definition, it is not clear how Dencora Way would become a rat run, since the more direct route for access to Unit 200 would be via the main site access. Assessment of traffic impact. Again, the council's highway engineer has reviewed the details provided by the applicant and has considered the impact of the development on the highway network and has no objections to the proposal in this respect. In terms of the 5 bullet points raised by the objector in the conclusion of the letter, these points have been addressed and there are no highway objections raised by the council's highway engineer. It is therefore considered that the proposed development is consistent with policy LLP 14. Conclusion. As set out in the report, the scheme is considered to be acceptable in principle, supporting the designation of the Category A employment area and with suitable mitigation measures by way of conditions, the impact of the development can be satisfactorily controlled to ensure that the proposed development would have no adverse impact on the surrounding area. Subject to conditions, there are no flood risk objections. Similarly, there are no other material impacts upon highways. There are no matters in respect of the ecology, nor would there be any harm to adjoining occupiers. The development would therefore be in accordance with the policies of the Luton Local Plan 2011 to 2031. On this basis, approval is recommended.
I call on Chris Green, Director. You come forward and take up the seat and switch on the microphone. And you've got up to 5 minutes to speak. And you'll be reminded when there's a minute left, and members may wish to ask questions. Okay? So ready when you are.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We have circulated a letter, so that will allow me to keep my presentation brief. Speaking on behalf of Forte Developments, who own a stretch of land and the road off Dencora Way, known as Park Avenue, and that serves several existing businesses in the surrounding employment area. So we've consistently raised concerns that the detailed access arrangements will cause problems for existing occupiers, and that the access to the service yard of Unit 200 has not been properly considered. They have amended the plans to show an access to the south. It's been referred to as the primary access, but of course there is no control over which is a primary access and a secondary access. So as far as we're concerned, that access can still be used and could still form the primary access. They have also retained an emergency gate in the corner of that unit as well. And whilst it is a private road, the council must still consider whether the use of this access is safe and appropriate. And existing businesses should not be punished by new development. So our first concern is safety. And the access off Park Avenue has only ever served a car park, an ancillary car park, as we've heard. It's been historically laid out as a car park with spaces there. There was no opportunity to use it for HGVs. There was no entrances to the rear of those buildings from that direction. So it has historically been used for cars only. The applicant has failed to show that HGVs can safely navigate this access. The drawings only show an HGV entering the site, not exiting. The plans fail to show even the curb lines. They don't show a typical 18.5 metre HGV, only a 16.5 metre one. So a lot of detail is missing on the geometry of that, and its detail as to how it will actually be safely used when there are parked cars and pedestrians along there. The problem is made worse because of the significant shortfall in parking. The council standards would allow 882 spaces for the development, but the applicant is providing just 234, a shortfall of 650 spaces. And their parking assessment ignores vans. This isn't discussed in the officer's report, but it seems to have been accepted. Yet we all know in practice, a shortfall of this extent will simply push workers and visitors to park in surrounding streets and will cause abuse of parking in the car parks of other businesses, which already happens in the area, and parking along side streets that will further conflict with the increased number of HGVs. Dencora presents an opportunity to be used as a rat run because the emergency access is being retained and there is no control over that, and that will allow delivery vehicles and other vehicles to simply use that as another alternative access if they're heading to the north. We've repeatedly raised concerns with the applicant's assessment of traffic impacts. Their assumed trip rates around half the level that's been used elsewhere on other applications in the area. The applicant has only considered traffic from the net uplift in floor space, and they assume that the existing floor space remains, but of course that's now been demolished. They say nothing about the junction of Dencora Way and Sundon Park Road. And because of these flaws, they've considerably underestimated the volume of traffic and the level of parking demand. The applicant's assessment cannot be relied upon to determine the application. Our concerns could be resolved by simply removing the proposed service yard access to Unit 200 and closing the emergency access. Neither is actually needed, but despite our request to do so, the applicant has chosen not to. New development should not come at the expense of existing local businesses. They're already experiencing considerable effects from the use of this access by demolition vehicles, including significant damage to the road surface. And we would therefore urge the committee to refuse this application in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by members to the objector? Very much.
Thank you.
And I'll ask the applicant, Neil Alcock, planning director. The same rules apply, up to 5 minutes. Members may have to ask questions. Or you may want to answer some of the points raised by the objector as well. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm the planning director at Hillwood. We are a specialist industrial and logistics developer with a track record of delivering new buildings across the UK. Our proposals at Sundon Park Road have already received some positive inquiries from potential occupiers. And a bit of background, which you already probably know, it's wholly brownfield site, category A employment area, used primarily by SKF as a ball bearing manufacturer for over 60 years until they ceased production last year. They vacated the site in March. We're finalising site demolition works next month, and our contractors have already safely disposed of significant levels of asbestos and other contaminants The scheme itself represents a significant investment and could generate 623 million gross value added for Luton over its lifetime. Up to 1,219 new direct and indirect full-time equivalent jobs are envisaged. This would be at both construction and operational phase. There would, of course, be opportunities for local people for training and development, for which we're happy to be secured by Section 106 agreement. The 5 buildings constructed on the site will be split into 8 units, and we are building these out speculatively, so we're seeking flexible uses to appeal to the widest range of occupiers. Your officers have been supportive of this approach, and we have worked positively with them since pre-application discussions at the end of last year. We're intending to start on site in March 2026 with a 50-week build programme, and the proposal will be a similar scale and footprint to the previous buildings on site. As reference to the site's history, we would incorporate SKF-style fonts for the building numbers and create an entrance totem acknowledging the site's role in ball bearing manufacturing. We've retained the former clock and signage from the tower, which are in storage, and have offered those to the Culture Trust. As you've heard, we've met with a neighbouring landowner to respond to their concerns, and our plans have been amended to create a new yard access via the internal spine road to Unit 200. Yard traffic for Unit 200 has the option of using the internal spine road access or the Dencora Way access, and there will be around 35 HGV movements per day. We are not altering the Dencora Way access, which last served the 170 space staff car park for SKF, and we have full access rights to this private industrial road. The submitted vehicle tracking plans have shown that a standard 16.5 metre HGV can comfortably manoeuvre in and out of yard areas and access points. Larger non-standard HGVs referenced in the objection are required by law to have the same turning circle as a standard HGV. Car parking levels for the whole development are industry standard for buildings of this scale, are in line with the council's maximum standards. This is a sustainable location within Luton, and our travel plan aims to encourage occupiers and their staff to use alternative modes of transport. We have also agreed to a Section 106 contribution for the provision of real-time information at nearby bus stops. The local highway authority have raised no objections at any point, and our transport consultant has carried out a proportional assessment of the traffic impact. It is clear we would not have an adverse impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts of the road network. We will continue to seek constructive engagement with the neighbouring landowner, but would reiterate that access rights over Dencora Way are not a planning issue. Ultimately, this is an industrial logistics proposal within an industrial area served by industrial roads. It is appropriate for the area, despite the objections which have been advanced to the contrary. In terms of design, the proposals in context with the surrounding employment area. The main frontage building, Unit 100, has been set back from Sundon Park Road, behind large areas of soft landscaping to follow the predominant building line. Our noise consultants have assessed the proposals with the nearest residential properties on the eastern side of Sundon Park Road. The noise assessment assumes a worst case scenario and uses industry standard British Standard 4142. The proposed noise levels will be below the existing residual noise climate, and the scheme would not give rise to significant adverse impacts by way of noise. We've received no rejections from other consultees such as the Lead Local Flood Authority, and our proposals would result in a significant betterment over the existing surface water drainage arrangements. We've found engagement with your officers positive, and we are keen to make a start on site in March next year to deliver initial construction jobs and investments. This is obviously a brownfield site within an employment area. The intention is to start on site as soon as possible to provide a substantial level of new jobs and investment, and the ability of these proposals to deliver economic growth whilst reusing brownfield land has significant weight in the overall planning balance. We therefore hope you support your officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions by members? Councillor Franks.
Thank you for that, Mr. Albrook. Could you give me, I'm starting with the assumption that you and your clients are experienced developers of this kind of project, have done several in other parts of the country, as far as I can see. Using your experience, could you give us your best guess or estimate as to how much of the 26,000 square metres of your completed development would be likely to be used for B8?
Out of all of the units, I would, again, in our experience, assume that the three larger units, so units 100, 200, 300, would be likely used for B8 primarily. That's not to say out of all of them that there wouldn't be a mix of uses. We found in our experiences, like I say, we develop across the UK. At the moment, there's quite a lot of demand for both manufacturing and logistics uses. And we've seen a sort of 50-50 split recently in terms of our lettings and our operators taking sites on.
So the largest buildings are going to be something like 60-70% of the square meterage.
Theoretically, if you look at those three, they're most suited for B8 uses. They actually have, from a transport and highways perspective, have less of an impact on the overall road network compared to light industrial or B2 general industrial uses. But as a worst case scenario, our highways consultants have done the assessment based on the most potential traffic movements.
Thank you.
Councillor, Francis Steer.
Thank you. So you're building these units, you haven't got tenants at the moment. Sorry, the applicant is. Yet you gave us a figure for HGV movements and you gave us a figure for noise levels. So if you don't know who the tenant is, who's going to occupy the units, is that just a guesstimate of HGV and noise levels?
Yes, it is, because we haven't got an end user. It's not, obviously, it's not based on sticking your finger in the air. It's based on the HGV movements are based on highways database, which I'm sure your highways officer will tell you about tricks. Noise levels are based on British standards, and the existing noise climate is taken, and then the assumed noise from things like in the noise assessment, it assumes obviously the uses and movements and things like car door slam in the car parks and things like that as well.
I mean, that's absolutely fine if it's based on your past experience, but that's not really what you said, but there we are.
But I mean, in terms of the noise as well, your officers have suggested a couple of conditions on there regarding the nearest unit, which is Unit 100, regarding no effectively only using white noise reversing alarms at certain times, and then meeting the standards for the noise levels that have been set out in terms of the sort of baseline noise position that's been established through the noise assessment, and then a noise management plan too, which we're happy to accord with.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and I understand that. It wasn't quite the way you put it. Would there be any restriction on any tenant? Sorry, it's probably a question to the officers, I think.
Further questions to the applicant? Yes, Councillor Mead, as ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also concerned about parking on site because I'm the councillor for that area, and my residents have spoken to me about that, and they are worried that there will be overspill into the local area, which is already experiencing parking issues. Is there any way you can increase it? It doesn't look to me as though you're going to get everybody on board. And yeah, I can understand them asking for 800 plus parking sites on parking bays on site.
From our perspective, again, we're looking at trying to create the most efficient units, and obviously reusing a brownfield site as well, which has significant costs in terms of remediation, etc. We also look to, as I've alluded to, we build these things out speculatively. Effectively, our mantra is, you build it and then the occupiers are going to come. We need to build the car parking levels to sort of industry standard. So what we are setting at the moment, for example, Unit 100, 64 spaces, that's one space per 105 square metres. Unit 200, 75 spaces, which is one space per 97 square metres. Unit 300 is one space for 99 square metres. And then the smaller units at the back all sort of 5 of them equates to one space per 150 square meters. Now that is industry standard. That is what an occupier is looking for in terms of the levels of car parking. Too little, and they'll say we've not got enough car parking for our staff here. Too much, and they'll say, well, we've got acres and acres of car parking we can't use. However, I appreciate your concerns, and I appreciate we are within an existing area, and obviously the objectors obviously raised this as a concern as well with existing business operations. I am happy if the officer wishes to add this to suggest a parking management plan where we can look at some sort of parking management scheme or something like that, where we, prior to occupation, we can set that out, just how it's managed and how we would encourage alternative modes of transport to and from the site as well.
Another one, please. On the question of noise, is there any limitation on the industrial side on what they can do throughout the night? I'm thinking if somebody's got presses running throughout the night, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't sound that bad, but 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to keep everybody awake, etc. Is there a shutdown or some sort of limit on how their processes will cope throughout the night?
Yeah, we've got your officers have suggested a particular noise condition, which is based on the findings of the noise report. And if obviously there was going to be a metal bashing or a stamping press or something like that, then that wouldn't be able to operate in the unit because of the noise and vibration that's associated with it. So it would be a relatively for an industrial process. I don't think it would be a noisy industrial process because it would fall foul of that condition.
One more, light pollution. Obviously, those living opposite are worried that if you're going to have these warehousing, some of them do operate 24/7, and they're concerned not only with the noise of the traffic, but also with light pollution. They'll have large bays brightly lit where they bring the lorries in and take them away, etc. Can we be assured that they will make sure that any overnight illumination is very concentrated and won't have overspill into the local residential areas?
Yeah, we've already prepared a lighting plan, councillor, to that effect, which shows the sort of candelas and the spread of the lighting. There's also a lighting condition, again, that your officers have recommended, which we can just obviously confirm that and just show. And it's not just the residents as well. I think there's potential to have a dark corridor on the western side of the site as well, because that's obviously got wildlife implications along the railway line as well. So we don't want to be putting glare into that as well.
I asked Chris to come in here as highways officer, because there's been mentioned quite a few times about traffic volume and not enough parking spaces. Well, we got your report, and you still stand by that?
Yeah, certainly do. The approach taken has been using nationally recognised methods for calculating transport movements. With regards to the parking provision, it is below the maximum standard permitted in the local plan. But what you have to consider, the developer's undertaken a parking stress assessment for the site based on the nationally held data, and we're comfortable with the proposed level of provision for parking on site given that assessment. Of course, the other thing that these modern developments, they're much more automated than they used to. So as time goes on and things become more automated, there are fewer employees, and as a result, there's less parking required. So all those things considered, yes, we're happy with the proposal as submitted.
Thank you very much. I was asking a question. Does he stand by his well, is it highways?
Yes.
Go on then.
As you know, there's a large school, secondary school, just down the road within a couple of 100 meters of the site. there's going to be some increase in traffic on Sundon Park Road. We've already seen an increase with the opening of 11A, junction 11A. Could you put in a pelican crossing near the schools to get the school pupils, children, students over the road safely? Because at the moment they seem to wander around all over the place, and I'd be a little bit easier if they had some safe crossing if they wanted to cross the road.
Well, that's certainly put me on the spot with a specific question like that. Pelican crossings are actually based on a fairly intensive assessment of traffic levels, and it's very difficult with a pelican crossing because when you have tidal flows like you do at schools, you will get usage at particular times of the day, and then for the remainder of the day it's not in use, and motorists get used to that, and it means they can ignore crossings that aren't regularly in use, people that use the route. It's a difficult assessment. I can't give you a straight answer now. Certainly the discussions with the developer haven't been around funding a pelican crossing as part of that works, and certainly our funding wouldn't cover that as it stands. I think it would be difficult to link that to the development, to be honest. I'd have to take planning advice on that. But we expect the majority of the traffic to be turning towards junction 11, the M1, sorry, and not turning towards Luton, given the proximity of two low bridges in that area. So we think it would be difficult to link it to the development as I sit here now. So.
Is it highways?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Mead, but I think that's a bit of a random request because with the pelican crossing, the school is not near the site. It's not opposite the site. So I don't think we should make that kind of demand here because I would not support that because the school is not opposite the site.
It's more speculative, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a bit of a speculative question to answer.
Yeah, but I think
you
we
just
should try and
anticipate what the
refrain from
traffic
that. And
volume is going
also,
to be.
yeah, but could you come back? And again, I sometimes go down Toddington Road, so I don't know where this observation about Sundon Park being very busy because of 11A, because it's not, because everyone's going down Toddington Road, then round by the Ocado. So I don't know where you've got that from, Clive. And I don't know where the objections come from for the rat run, because I don't see that being an issue. I don't know why anybody would go into an industrial and then go around out. So could you come back on your observations on that one? Because that I just don't know how that could be a rat run.
I think you're asking me to comment on whether I consider that to be a rat run. No, I don't. I think traffic is unlikely to leave Sundon Park Road to go around that route to rejoin Sundon Park Road. It seems unlikely to me.
Okay. Questions to the planning officer? Councillor Franks?
Yeah, I've got several, I'm afraid. First of all, I'm confused over Dencora Way. Reading the report, listening to what we were told earlier, and looking at the update sheet that's been presented to us, I'm given the impression that Dencora Way is not going to be used as an access. And yet both the objector and the applicant's representatives say that it will be used. And in some of those remarks, the word emergency access has been used. I think I'd like to know a lot more about the use of the Dencora Way access. And if it is only for emergency uses, then how are you going to make sure that that's the only use that actually is used for? I do have some more questions.
Well, as I described in my presentation, the access arrangements changed from those which were originally submitted. So the plan that you now see up on the display indicates the primary access to the site as being from the Spine Road. The two accesses which are shown, the one at the northern part of the site and the one at the southeast corner of the site are both existing accesses. The one at the southeast is used for emergency purposes, and the one at the northeast is to be retained. But the primary access to the site and the most logical access to the site is via the spine road and via the main part of the site.
Well, that doesn't make it any clearer than it was before. Thanks very much indeed. How are you intending to ensure that the Dencora Way access is only used for emergency vehicles?
Well, if it is to be used solely for emergency purposes, and the one to the southeast is used for emergency purposes, then they would have to be controlled by condition as such.
There's no such condition at the moment. Are you proposing to add one?
If its members wishes to add a condition, we can add a condition, but at the moment there is no limitation on the access to the one at the northeast. As I described, it could be it historically has been used to service a car park, but you could have, provided its ancillary use to the main site, you could have an unlimited use. So whether the condition is reasonable in that respect is something that would need to be considered.
Okay, let's move on to car parking then. 1,200 employees, 234 car park spaces doesn't really add up in my mind. Looking at the facts chart that's given in the report, I note that under parking controls, you're telling us that they're going to be achieved by double yellow lines on site. Excuse me, are the on-site roads going to be public highway? I doubt it. In which case, how is that going to be enforced, please?
Well, the matter of the level of car parking is something which the highway engineer has just described. As far as the internal operations are concerned, we could put on a condition which required a parking management plan, because the internal operation of the site will be managed by, as I understand it, the applicant.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Let's have a look at the kind of employment that's likely to be generated here. Since a huge proportion of the square meterage looks like it's destined for warehousing, and given that warehousing generates very little employment generally, I note that developers these days don't even call it warehousing, do they? They try to make it more attractive by calling it distribution, logistics, or fulfillment centres. It's all the same thing. It doesn't employ very many people. So what's the opportunity here for a condition to limit the proportion of the new floor space that is used for distribution, warehousing, logistics, or fulfillment centres?
Well, current policy is to provide flexibility of use within sites such as this to foster growth. So to impose a condition which restricted the amount of warehousing would be unreasonable. I understand the point that you're making in terms of the extent of employment that could occur as a consequence of the development, but the whole object of sites such as this is to provide opportunity for inward investment, for growth, for economic investment. So to impose a condition restricting a particular element of floor space to warehousing, I think would be unreasonable.
No further questions, but we'll have some comments when you get to that stage, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just about conditions and how you restrict access and so on, and references to adopted public highway has been made. I think if members were going down this route, this would need to be looked at with highway engineers and so on. But if you want to properly regulate the use and passage of roads, and I use that word on purpose because that's the definition of a road is referred to in the Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984, which is your act that allows you to make traffic orders, put double yellow lines down and so on. And you can put those on roads. Roads can be private. They don't necessarily need to be public adopted highways. So when officers talk about you would condition the right of passage to use various accesses or indeed restrict them, actually the appropriate mechanism to do that where our roads are concerned is via a traffic order. Thank you, Chairman.
Any further questions? Yeah, Francis.
Thank you. Just on the emergency exit, which is a similar traffic management point, could there be gates fitted that could only be opened during emergencies? And is that a planning condition that could be applied?
There are already gates on the emergency access at the southeast, but there's no, in terms of the northeast access, there's no limitation on use. And the highway engineer did advise in the initial consultation before the plans were amended that that access at the northeast could appropriately accommodate HGV vehicles.
Yes, because I thought you said it was gated. So that does that mean it has gates that are only opened during an emergency?
Well, there are two. If you
Yeah,
look
no.
at the one to the southeast, the lower one, they are gated and they actually have emergency access written on them.
Yeah.
But the one on the northeast has been used as the objector stated as access for a car park. So it has history of use as a car park. And originally, before the access was added down at the southern portion onto the Spine Road, that was the intended point of access to the site. And that access can accommodate vehicles, whether it's within the right of way agreement that there is between the two parties is another matter. But from a planning perspective, that access could be used to access that part of the site, and it would not be an inappropriate access in the context of its capability of being able to be used.
Any further questions? I've got comments now. David, you had some comments?
Only very brief comment. Thank you, Chair. The planning officer is correct, of course. The town does need investment in employment developments, but it needs investments that are going to actually produce lots and lots of jobs. And warehouses don't do that. That's enough. I don't need to say anymore.
Any further comments? Francis?
But we can only deal with the application that's in front of us. And it's Cat A, and I think it's appropriate. And I think the only questions that members have had is over transport and highways.
Okay, any further comments? Then I'll move to the recommendation, and the recommendation is approval. Is that seconded? We go to the vote, Maria.
Thank you, Chair. If I could take your vote, please, for, against, or abstention. Councillor Abasola.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ambia.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgen.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Farouk.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
Again.
Thank you. Councillor Hanif.
For.
Thank you. Khan's not here. Councillor Mead.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Steer.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Thank you.
And that's 6-3. So that's carried. So planning permission has been granted subject to the conditions in the report. Okay, thank you very much. The next item is page 52, land rear of 142-162 Bishopcote Road.
I think it's Frank on the one.
Sorry?
I think Frank's the plan. Oh yeah, I think Frank gave me as a plan.
Oh, yeah. Frank, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, members and Chair and everyone else. We are here looking at the application for Bishopscote Road playing fields. So, just to start off, the site is set on the boundary of 3 wards, the Northwell Ward, Saints and Biscot. It's south of Austin Road, with Bishopscote Road to the west, Culverhouse Road is to the east, and St Ethelbert's Avenue is to the south. Along each of these boundaries sit low-density housing and a handful of shops. To the east of the site is William Austin Junior Primary School, with whom the playing fields have an historic association. The single pedestrian and vehicular access for the proposal would reuse the existing gated vehicular route from Bishopscote Road, set between 2 end-of-terrace houses. The emergency access will be catered for via the adjacent school, which I'll come on to later. The site is close to the A6 and Leagrave Railway Station. There are a number of trees and bushes around the boundary, which is currently enclosed by a mix of steel palisade fencing and chain link between posts. I'll come on to that photo on the left in a moment. The site currently, until a few weeks ago, was overgrown playing field. And in the recent past, the site was owned by the Chiltern Learning Trust, who had used it for Denby High School as football pitches. The land was transferred to Luton Borough Council with the approval from the Department for Education in November 2024. As you can see from recent site photos taken before the building works took place for the works I'll tell you about in a moment, disuse and moulds have taken over that surface and it's something less formal. Okay, just to go back momentarily, keep that picture on the left on your mind because I will talk about that in a moment. So, to the proposals. Starting with the building, a new school is proposed to accommodate pupils with a special type of SEMH need, called social, emotional, mental health. This stands for that, what I just explained, and it is whereby a pupil has difficulty in managing their emotions and behaviour. The SEMH school will be the first of its kind in the borough. It will address the high demand for students diagnosed with social-emotional mental health and relieve the pressure on mainstream schools that currently offer SEMH provision. The 1- and 2-storey building is designed to accommodate up to 112 pupils. That's the right slide. Sorry, my slide checkers not working. There we go. It's designed to accommodate 112 pupils across 14 core teaching classrooms. An additional 3 vocational educational classrooms will focus on Key Stage 3 and 4. There are also specialist rooms specialist provision rooms for aspects such as support, observational and pastoral care. The school will have on-site catering, a dining hall, and indoor sports and assembly hall. This is the first floor. Outside, there'll be a paved courtyard with seating for lunch and other activities. In terms of play space, there will be a grass playing fields to the sides and to the rear of the building, along with a multi-use games area, referred to as a Mooga, and a 5-a-side pitch, both of which are surfaced. The proposed building will extend to a maximum of 2 stories. The rear 2 wings are single story with flat and single pitched roofs. The 2-story section will be a high quality brick slip system, probably going to be grey at this stage, is what's been indicated. It'll be a mixture of light grey buff colours with hues mixed in. The slip system will allow for corbelled detailing around the corners of the windows and the door reveals. The rear wings use a standing seam cladding system, copper in colour to contrast with the main 2-story section. The seams will be a random formation of different lengths and widths, and the rear of the wings will use treated timber clad to add further visual interest. So before we move on to site access, I just want to mention what that photo showed earlier on. Although the site has recently been developed under emergency provisions to accommodate a local primary school, this planning application before you proposes its own set of details for access and layout, and what is currently being built on that site should not be confused with what's proposed by this application. Officers from the property section are here at the committee tonight if members need further clarification on that subject. So to the slide on screen. The existing site entrance off Bishopsgate Road sits between numbers 160 and 162. This will be retained and upgraded to enable the road to accommodate two-way vehicular traffic to highway adoption standards. There will be 2-metre wide footways either side and crossings within the site to direct pedestrians to the dedicated walking route. This is the latest site plan. You will notice that your reports have a slightly older version, and I'll come on to that in a moment. There's been some minor revisions and improvements. The soft landscaping is proposed to the boundaries and around the frontage. Within the site, improvements have been made to walkways, but the layout is designed to accommodate motor vehicles first. The applicant explains this is because the pupil demographic means the school will predominantly cater for car-reliant staff and pupils. The school will have a wide catchment area for specialist staff who will drive, and nearly all pupils will arrive or depart by taxi or car. Negotiations have secured satisfactory safety improvements to pedestrian routes through the car parks so that ancillary staff and people walking or cycling to the sporting facilities or to work in the school and other functions other than teachers can easily access the site on foot. What you can see on here is a screen is these two footways connect to the main road, Bishopsgate Road. This is the primary pedestrian way into the building, and then the primary walkways around the car parks. We've secured with the applicant crossings, walkways behind car parking spaces, better arrangement of the parking spaces to allow routing and walking. And you'll see also there's been some rejigging from the plan in your pack there to where the bin store and the servicing is arranged. Cyclists will also be able to come in and park their bikes here. And there'll be a temporary parking here for cyclists during construction phasing. Disabled parking has been increased from the first plans you will have seen, and so have the number of EV charging spaces. In terms of vehicle circulation and parking, I've amended this drawing here to show how the parking and servicing of the site works. So I'm just going to walk you through these. What you see here in red is staff and staff servicing, and what you see in purple is staff and visitor. There's two options there. The front of the site is occupied by staff parking and pupil queuing drop-off areas. Vehicles entering the site will take one of two routes. Staff and delivery traffic will be restricted by condition to prevent overlap with pupil drop-off and pick-up times. Staff arriving early will likely choose to park in the area marked A, as it offers the shortest walk to the building. Once this fills, staff will have to drive around through the site, parking areas B or C to find a space. Cycle parking spaces, as I said, are provided in the locations marked D. Service vehicles will travel the same route, with all vehicles exiting outwards via the frontage roundabout. A turning head is provided at the end of the service area, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, in terms of pupil drop-off, once taxis and parents' vehicles arrive, and any pedestrians start to move, the site will fill up as directed by the school's 3 traffic marshals. You can see there are 3 points there marked in that plan where the school and their traffic management plan will have people standing to direct traffic into the site during drop-off and pick-up times. The pupil drop-off window will likely be 30 minutes at each morning and afternoon, but the school will stagger and phase the taxi drop-off times to mitigate traffic build-up. This is something that we've spoken with the applicant to some depth about to understand how it works in other schools and to understand what contact is made with the taxis and how it's all regulated. And it is an operation, and it is something that's done in other schools, and it does work. Children will be escorted into the building as queuing cars empty their occupants in the designated areas. A similar arrangement will occur in the afternoon in reverse. Core staff will start to leave around an hour after the last taxi departs. The 3 queuing lanes can accommodate 18 cars, and the drop-off bays are 6 metres in length to allow individual cars to manoeuvre in and out more easily. The school will train its traffic marshals to manage the traffic in accordance with the traffic management plan, which is to be secured by a condition. In terms of waste recycling and delivery facilities, they are located to the northern side of the school building, with a turning head at the end and a loading bay for deliveries accessing onto the kitchen and service areas. This has been rejigged since the first plans that have been included in the report, and you'll see there's been some improvements there. So the bins are right near the doors where they get serviced to. Previously, they were over here by this blue car and the zebra crossing over here, which was a long way for them to be moved. The turning head allows emergency vehicles access onto the Muga and the playing field area, should an ambulance need to attend those facilities, or should a vehicle need to attend from across the site for any reason the main entrance is blocked. The surface materials of the car park will incorporate permeable block paving to distinguish it from macadamized roadways and to allow surface water to be collected and diverted into an on-site attenuation pond. Although the site comprises former playing fields, the local plan does not formally designate them as such. While replacement playing fields uses are being proposed, parts of the existing fields will be lost to development from the school footprint in the car park. Despite previously expressing support for the scheme during pre-application discussions, Sport England have now objected to the loss of the playing fields. The development would therefore comply with all Luton local plan policies except LLP 27, because it builds on the playing fields. Because it is contrary to a policy, the case has been advertised as a departure from the local plan. Any member resolution tonight to determine the proposal, either in accordance with or overturning the recommendation, will therefore need to be presented to the Ministry of Housing and Local Government to establish if the Secretary of State desires to call in the application or leave the decision-making authority with the Council. With impacts on neighbouring amenity and highways sufficiently mitigated by layout, design and conditions, and the site both redundant and not designated for any other statutory purpose, significant weight has been given to the benefits of providing the SEMH school within the borough boundaries. The current recommendation is to approve permission subject to a range of conditions and a signed community use agreement securing some community access to the sporting facilities. The draft conditions will be finalised before the case is referred to the Secretary of State, and that concludes the planning explanation. I have a couple of additional points that have come up today. I just want to read through those very briefly to the committee if I can. With reference to paragraph 97, where section 106 is talked about, to secure the use of local companies, skills and labour, we don't enter into a legal agreement with ourselves because our contractual obligations and the way we procure projects already incorporate this aspect. Any contract or procurement has a local social value clause built into it, and the applicant has confirmed that to us this afternoon, that anyone who tenders for this project has to meet those requirements. Other aspects such as the parking permit restrictions and community use agreement can be regulated by the use of conditions, and there will therefore need to be some tweaking and addition of the conditions and informatives as they've been presented. And on that subject of conditions, you'll notice some of them have TBC written in them. That's because plans were being amended in the process of the report being written, and we didn't know the exact reference numbers to put in those. We do have the revised plans now, so we can actually put in the correct reference numbers. And finally, condition 5, the reference to phase 1 should read phase 2. That concludes my presentation, Chair, and if any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Frank. We've got the objector first, Adrian Fonseca. Are you there? Are you, Adrian? You want to come forward and use the microphone? And when you're ready to address the committee, you've got up to 5 minutes, and members may wish to ask questions.
My name is Adrian Fonseca. I live at 160 Bishop's Court Road. I live next to the entrance where this new development is going to be taking place. And I'm raising a lot of concerns about it. Anyway, I received a letter from the planning application, which was in respect to the new development, which was addressed to me on the 17th of June, 25. Reference number, okay, I wanted erection of the 1-2-story building. They were asking me to ask for comments, and I didn't hear anything more from them. Then on the 7th of October 25, without any formal notice of construction started, they pulled all the gates down. The big, massive bulldozers, heavy-duty equipment, which was brought up to the property without informing any of the residents or anybody. I got onto the phone and rang up Luton Borough Council. And I spoke to about 5, 6 guys in the different environment places and all, and nobody seemed to have any idea what's going on. So I kept on trying and never got response from anybody. And everybody told me that they don't know what's going on. Then after 2 weeks, about a week and a half, I received a phone call saying to me that this development is not a new construction, it's a temporary development for a new primary school. Denby Primary School, which they have problems with the roofing. So they urgently need to have this premises done, develop a primary school for temporary use for 6 months. But I said, now nobody has informed me about this. I don't know anybody. And I've asked the Luton Borough Council and nobody seems to know what's going on. They said it's not been approved. The site for the 2-story building hasn't been approved by the Secretary of State. That's what I've been told. So I said, why is this operation going? They said, well, it's only a temporary accommodation for the schools for 6 months. I said, yes, that's fine. It's okay with me. But you've got to inform the residents, get traffic and everybody involved into this area. You just can't come and start building and putting bulldozers in without anybody aware of this situation. And I was puzzled, and the family are not were puzzled. And I said, well, I don't know what is going on here. Nobody's informed us anything. I kept on trying, and this is what they said to me. It's a temporary thing, accommodation for Denby Primary School. That's fine. I said, you should have informed me regarding this matter. I live next door. I live next to the entrance of the thing, heavy bulldozers, heavy trucks, the noise that goes into that place. The concrete that was on the floor on in the entrance, exit entrance, they're breaking everything, and the vibration to my property. I don't know what's happening with the foundation with my property. And as you know, that entrance was not meant for high bulldozers and big trucks. It's only a massive little passage to get through in and out. With this big and massive development, and I hope everybody's considered exactly the traffic and we've got a mosque just outside the main thing, and we've got a big new development coming in there. Where's all this traffic going to go? Fine, maybe there's approval. I'm all for it, for the new development, but they've got to consider all these facts and all that. I mean, it's not a small development. It's going to be a massive development, as you can see on the planning. It's massive. So what I would suggest that I should have been informed, and I need an apology letter from the council saying that they started this construction without informing the residents, and nobody was aware of it. Thank you.
Okay, as regards the temporary school, I'll get somebody to respond to you. I'll contact the chief executive to respond to you. Or do you want to do that, Roger? I will get you an apology from the chief executive, though.
Mr. Fonseca has submitted a formal complaint and will receive a formal response.
Roger.
Chair, this is just about a matter of interest. So I don't think it's the objector in front of us, but an objector has contacted their MP. When it's a planning issue, I immediately hand it over to a colleague. So that's just for record. Any planning issue, I don't touch.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fine. But I think the basis of Mr. Fonseca's complaint is the temporary accommodation that's going up, which did go pretty quick because of the problems they got at Denby School, but it is only temporary. But you should have received more information. Jakob, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a question to Mr. Fonseca. Are you commenting on the new school or the temporary buildings?
The accommodation that's been found.
But Chair, that's not what we're here discussing now.
Thank you very much. Yep. And you get responded to pretty soon, okay?
Sorry?
You'll get a response pretty soon anyway. You've submitted a formal complaint, haven't you? Roger,
We hope to respond to
explain?
Mr. Fonseca by the end of the week.
Yeah, by the end of the week, you'll get a response, okay? Thank you. Questions by members to this application? Councillor Franks.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. I mean, I think we need to start with the assumption that there is, without any doubt at all, a need for this facility in the town. The question before us is whether this is the right location, and if so, are the conditions suitable? My first question then is, how can we ensure that there are school zigzags covering the Bishopscote Road entrance, please?
Frank, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether Chris wanted to respond on that. I can respond on that, certainly. As part of the condition package, we tend to put in either informatives or conditions requiring various Section 278 works under the Highways Act, and a number of other things like that to inform the developer that they have certain obligations to meet. In terms of zigzags and other such restrictions near schools, that's comes under the remit of the Highways Act, not the Planning Act as such. So in the formation of the new access, Chris and Highways team have asked for detailed plans of the access and the arrangements for pedestrians and vehicles, and that will include, at that point in time, a planning eye being cast over what measures are being proposed, but also Chris will expect, under the Highways Act, zigzag lines and other measures, such as barriers and that kind of thing that go in, to be proposed as part of that. My camera is on. I'm not sure you're not seeing me.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, you can hear me.
Oh, I got you now.
Yeah, it's loose. I think the
I
camera.
I don't know where you are. It looks like some exotic resort you're at.
No, that's just to hide the real background, which is a bedroom. No, so the package of measures for street signage and street signing would be dealt with by the Highways Act, and we tend to not condition those elements be required because they're covered by the Highways Act in its own right. But certainly, I'm on two screens. I don't have the benefit of a printed out report here, so I can't leaf through the conditions now. Maybe Chris wants to comment on the highways markings.
Yeah, he just raised his hand, Chris.
Yeah, just to confirm, we would be seeking school keep clear markings outside the entrance, just to enable vehicles to turn in and out freely.
Okay. Thank you very much. They shouldn't be required with perfectly adequate drop-off facilities, but they will be, I promise you.
Yeah.
They will be required. The other question then is, I note there is emergency access to Culverhouse Road via the William Austin site. How do you ensure, please, that it really is only used for emergencies?
Just going to share that screen, Chair, so you can see what we're talking about. So the emergency access literally has been provided at our request after consultation with the fire brigade and the police, and that is because there's one vehicle access point. Should whatever happen that involves the entrance being blocked, I can mind a bump between cars. How does it work? So if there's a need to get an emergency vehicle on site, this route here from the neighbouring school will be taken. It's primarily intended to get a fire tender in there or an ambulance. It's not intended to be a main access for taxi drop-off, pickup, or staff. This is a one-time only, once in a 5-year period kind of thing. If someone breaks their leg out here and can't move, the ambulance can get to them. There are gates around the play areas, so there will be a gated entrance into that, and the same thing from the other side. St Ethelbert's are not going to want a highway route across there. That's been negotiated with them. Sorry, not St Ethelbert's. William Austin are not going to want the open access there, so they will be gated at both ends, and it will be a arrangement only, i.e. a 999 call. So we are not permitting a vehicle entrance there. It's marked as emergency vehicle access. Within the conditions, I'm pretty sure we've got the primary access will only be off Bishopscote Road. I think we've tried to pin down aspects like this, and certainly if we haven't done that to member satisfaction, I'll make notes on that tonight, and we'll go through the conditions to make sure those elements are added.
Thanks for that. And just to remind everybody, we've got Roger Kirk and Anthony Moy here. If you want to ask them any questions as well, representing the applicants.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand why there's a need for an emergency vehicle access, and it's very sensible. But the risk of tipping yet more traffic onto Culverhouse Road is really not acceptable. So this really has to be restricted to emergency vehicles, and that has to be a way of making sure that that is in fact in practice it does actually happen, because it's not unusual for parents and people dropping off children at school to use unauthorized accesses to school premises.
We can, if approved, we can put that as a condition. Any further questions? Francis? Can I come in? Yeah, you come in afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. The traffic marshals, who are they? Are they permanent staff from the school who will then put on a high-vis jacket a couple of times a day and direct the traffic, or will they be specially recruited for this job?
Chair, I can answer that because I've worked in this question. I've worked in this kind of school. No.
You're doing it.
I'm not volunteering. No, I can answer this question without. No, I can answer this. I've worked in special needs schools. What happens is the staff have a duty rota, so the staff take turns to do taxis, to monitor the gate. So the school will manage that in house. That's standard procedure within the specialist school sector.
Roger, would that apply in to this school? You would, yeah. Okay. Francis, you were next.
Thank you. Just on the use of obviously there's a loss of the playing fields that will it'll likely go in front of the Secretary of State. Can you just tell us a bit more about the community access to the bugger and the playing field, which might help mitigate that?
Of course I can. Just going to show a screen again for you, to give some context to what I'm saying. So the community access, community use agreements are an undertaking by a building, typically a school, to allow evening use or weekend use, whenever the school isn't in use as a school, to the local residents, members of the public. Don't necessarily have to be local, but they would then operate a booking system whereby the sports facilities can be booked during a set range of hours for your five-a-side, your squash match, or here basketball match, depending on which facility we're talking about. Here you've got the Muga and you've got a five-a-side. No outdoor lighting is proposed to those at the moment, so that's worth bearing in mind that it's thinking about winter use. Obviously, it's a summertime use. There are hours of use conditions proposed on the permission to limit the push into evening time and onto weekends. Internally, within the building, there is a sports hall. I'm not sure this will run in the right order, but I'm just going to run it back quickly. Sports hall with changing facilities on the side here, and there are toilets on that side here. So arguably, this sports hall could be available for indoor sporting functions, functionality, as well as the outdoor Muga areas. So there will be a legal agreement, a draft order has been put in for us to look through, and we've had them on other schools where it allows a degree of access outside those school times. The car park layout, as a result, has been thought about to try and make it more useful for that sort of pedestrian movement through. So people arriving locally on cycles, it's not shown in this graphic, but the cycle stores are here in this area here. I think there they are marked there. And this car park is the closest one. So given the size of the sporting facilities, it's unlikely this car park would fill up with evening users, but they would be arriving on foot from the local area or on a bike or by car, walking in, using the change facilities. Alternatively, if the sporting people are using the outside areas, then the school would make a route available through the outside to those Muga areas there. some weekend use is proposed, and obviously the school as such gains permitted development rights when it's granted, which allow it to have, you know, school fetes and that sort of thing on the weekend in the usual permitted development way. So community access, community functionality, the school can choose to rent out a meeting room, the sports hall in the evening, again, all within that functionality. Does that answer the question, Chair?
Just I'm wondering whether that's a planning condition.
There are planning conditions proposed. The issue with this is because it's a school when the site's owned by the council, we can't enter into a legal agreement. So typically those sorts of things will be secured by Section 106 or a unilateral undertaking. Here, we have proposed, we've negotiated with the applicant a unilateral where they will sign, the operator of the school will sign an agreement saying they agree to provide access, which is not the first time by any stretch that the council's done this, and it's a fairly common thing that's now happening so that we can guarantee a degree of public access, and that normally has a 10 to 15 year requirement on it. So it goes into the future so that the use can become established within the community and people know it's something they can do.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Can I just ask the question, the tree screening on the plan there at the rear of the houses, are they trees already there or are they yet to be planted?
I would say, Chair, be very careful about assuming this plan. This is a visual, a 3D visual. It was given to me yesterday about 2 o'clock in the afternoon to update the car parking arrangements. It's a computer graphic. The tree arrangement and the tree plans are something that our tree officer's been looking at, and a landscaping scheme is something that will be conditioned. So there's a degree of tree coverage around the boundaries, but not what's shown on this is not an accurate representation of the trees that are there. As you can see, there are some trees along those boundaries. Some are in back gardens and some are in the site. A new plan for landscaping is to be secured. Indicative landscaping has been given, but the tree officers requested more indigenous species and species that will work well in those grounds. So what you see on that side, for example, you see a lot of conifers providing thicker screening. Obviously, when conifers go higher, they become bare at a lower level. So the right tree, the right planting and the right boundary treatment is something that we've put conditions on in place to try and secure. So fencing as well as lighting are conditioned to make sure we get the right details in, and so is landscaping. So by all means, you know, look at this graphic to show the school, but the boundary treatment, it's not quite accurate. Again, palisade fencing is shown to the rear gardens. I imagine the detail will need to be wooden fencing to allow residents to maintain privacy as well.
I think lighting can be intrusive. Every time I go down Rotherham Avenue, where Stockwood Academy is in the evenings, the flood lighting is pretty intense. I understand it's community use and there was a condition there, but it can be really obtrusive. The lighting. It's just a comment. That's all.
It's a 2-story building, Chair, and it's maximum. Obviously, we'll have security lighting. The conditions for lighting typically require, certainly the ones I've written before, have required angles of no more than 30 degrees, lighting to face downwards, motion sensors to be deactivated after a certain number of minutes, to ensure that is controlled. I think we've put conditions on here to make sure that any outdoor lighting scheme has to be approved by the planning department. So that would include the outdoor sports facilities, but also any car park or building lighting, because our concern too would be light spill into neighbouring windows and a necessary light spill at night from the building upwards. So those are 2 things that we've tried to condition already. So the point taken on that. Thank you.
Yeah. I think there is a time consideration on the Stockwood Academy. I think it's 9 o'clock, which is acceptable because we want it to be community use, and it's certainly well attended. Francis, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, and this is obviously not your fault, but you've shown us in effect a graphic which is not true, which shows tree planting that is not proposed and does not exist. And that's, to my mind, not particularly helpful for the committee.
Chair, again, I have to work with what's been presented to me by the applicant. So I can only show you what's available to me as submitted. The graphic is a 3D CGI. The plans that we have of the layout are the closest we have. So here you have Google aerial photos. This is Google Streets, Google Earth. So this is a 3D mapping of the area showing you tree cover that exists around the site already, obviously when that was taken and when that was 3D modeled. And again, some other views just to sort of give some height and context to some of the trees along there. A lot of those trees look to have grown beyond the conifer height that they would have been useful at. And then going forward in the presentation, the best photos I have are the ones submitted with the application. These are to give you a context of the wider site. The actual floor plan and site plan are what I can show you, and that just runs through into that presentation at the end where I showed you the layout here as an attenuation pond with indicative landscaping, but we are to secure the condition for landscaping. So details of how the boundaries will be treated, how the fencing and means of enclosure will work are all for consideration. There is an urgent need for the school, and the applications come in on a short time frame, and what's been presented to us is sufficient for us to assess, because there's ample space here to deliver fencing, secure means and landscaping on the boundaries. We're confident the conditions can happily address those functions.
Sorry, I appreciate that and what you've said. My concern is you've presented a graphic from the applicant which is not accurate, and you didn't give a sort of health warning on it.
Yes, Sunny Sahadavan, Head of Planning. So when we consider applications, the applicant has at liberty to present what could happen in terms of a proposal. And whilst those trees might not be there, they could be, because we are imposing a landscaping condition and we can require those trees to be there. So the applicant is perfectly entitled to provide a visual image of what could happen as a result of this development coming forward.
Isn't there a difference between what could happen and what the proposal is? Or am I just
in the same way they provide CGIs, it's the same principle. CGI showing what the building would look like. It's the same principle.
Yeah, the landscaping conditions there. Roger.
Chair, the applicant, who I'm speaking for, is committed to improving the tree planting and landscaping of the site.
Any further questions? Any comments? Jakob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly welcome this application. It's absolutely needed. And because of the growing need for this kind of school, mainly through improvements in diagnosis and identifying children with these challenges, and they simply cannot have their needs met in mainstream schools. I've got over 20 years of experience in education. I've worked in special needs. I've worked in mainstream, and these kids do need a place. In terms of the entrance to the site, if anybody's looking for a president, look at Ickenyon High School. It's got a similar entrance where it's got just about one way in and some gated areas. So there is similarities to be found within the borough in terms of this kind of site. And I think, I don't mean to be facetious, but I don't think we should hang up about trees, because that could be added later. I think the main thing is that the school goes ahead, it gets built, and that the need is fulfilled within the borough for specialist provision. Because at the moment, some of the special schools in the borough are in cramped spaces, like Ladies here. There's one in Hightown, it's a growing need. I think this kind of school addresses that, and I will be supporting the application.
You're coming at the end. Any further comments? Yeah, Councillor Amber.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is actually comments. Yes, I welcome this proposal. It's a much needed, but I'm a little bit concerned about the location of the proposal because I live nearby the location, and I'm just only worried about the consequence of the traffic because we have one infant and one junior school just next door, and there's a mosque or community purpose built a community center which will be which is undergoing, and there's a retail shop. And this Bishop's Court Road already in the morning time, because I drive through this road every morning. Then I've been experiencing already congestion and traffic. So I'm not sure about what will be the situation of when you have the school at the road traffic. So then highway, they can have any sort of alternative provision to change the road layout. Thank you.
I think it's a question for you again, Chris. You certainly earn your money tonight, haven't you?
We've carried out the assessment based on obviously we have to look at the application as it comes in and the site where it is. The method of traffic management proposed is the best solution for that location. So I accept Bishopsgate Road is a busy route. It's fairly heavily parked along both sides, but with the introduction of the school keep clear markings and so on, and the traffic management proposed, we accept that it will work.
I think the key to this is that the pupils that are attending this proposed school will have transport. The cars and the minibuses will drive into the school, decant or pick up, and then drive out again. So you won't get the phenomenon that you've got in a lot of schools where people are waiting outside in their cars for their pupil to either drop them off or pick them up. For example, Putteridge Road is one that comes to mind, which is a bit of a nightmare. So I think that's covered. I think it's more or less covered. Jakob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what we're trying to do as a local authority is to make sure that especially the parents of primary school kids should not be going in their cars. They should be walking because that's how primary school places are allocated. And it's not an excuse for them to come and park their cars, especially in Ridley Lane where they've destroyed the grass verge. They've got wooden stakes have been put in, but they're still blocking the roads. So I think the school leaders and the trust, the academies that run these schools, have a duty to tell their parents of these kids that they should not be picking up their kids in cars, especially primary schools. Now, with this special needs, as you said, the kids they have a taxi provision as part of their place. They'll be, literally bussed in and out of the site. But I think I know it's part of an ongoing debate, but I don't think that should be something for us to worry about because the schools that are nearby should be doing their part in deterring parents from parking the car and destroying the grass verges and being a general nuisance.
I know with Whippley Infant School in Farley, they put the wooden stakes in around the roundabout, and I think there's only 3 left now.
Chair, if I can just comment on that, the applicant in this situation has redesigned the entire roundabout area here to try and try and make it a pedestrian-friendly, focused area. So this was initially going to be much wider, and they've tried to introduce a safe space for the marshal to stand, direct the cars away from this island here. So this sketch you've got here, this drawing here, is not the final version. It's a preliminary one we had. If I can show you the full version, I'll bring this one across for you in a moment because it's on a different screen. But the main point being that we've prioritised pedestrian routes in. So if there are people living locally that will be dropping their children off and picking up, they can walk safely through those areas. And again, cars are kept away from them. There's a separation distance. I'm going to try and quickly switch presentation because I'm on a different document to try and show you. And I want to make sure I bring the right drawing up because it kind of covers the question you asked earlier about landscaping as well. So if I can just bring that one up. Right, here we go. So you can see here better pedestrian routes through with landscaped areas, and also you've got the division of space to make cars stored on site, so that the backup, like Chris said, won't happen on off site, it's happening on site, and the way it's managed will mean that people are not creating a hazard on the main roads, and pedestrians can walk safely through the site. Not sure if that came up on screen or not, but
we'll move on anyway. Any further comments? Stephen, you want to come? Oh, Francis, he wants to come in the end.
Yeah, I think it's a really good scheme, and I think the traffic management for drop off and pick up of pupils has been really well thought out. Hopefully it'll work, and I suspect that if it needs tweaking a little bit once the school is open, there's scope for that as well. So I think it's a really, really good scheme.
Stephen, you can come in now then.
Thank you, Chair. It's just quickly in terms of highway works. I heard the planning officer refer to that they'd be done under the Highways Act. Just to be careful then, I think some kind of delegation will be needed to add highway conditions in, because as far as I can see, they're not in there. And I'm just referring to paragraph 79 that refers to section 278 agreement. Now, the planning officer is correct. We cannot enter a 278 agreement with ourselves. And that 278 agreement would ordinarily be produced after the consent is granted, and a planning condition would require the 278 to be entered into, which would then list what the highway works are. And therefore it would say something along the lines of either you can't commence the development or you can't occupy the development until the 278 agreement, highway works, has been entered into. So the planning officer is correct, we can't enter into a 278 agreement, but we still need conditions related to the highway works being carried out before either the commencement or occupation. Because, for example, the site could, not necessarily, but it could be sold to someone else. And if you want those highway works done, you need a condition preventing the occupation or commencement until they're done. So I take the point from planning officer, you can't enter a 278 agreement if it's with the council, but nevertheless, conditions are still required to say what the highway works are and that they will be carried out either before commencement or occupation. I don't know what the answer to that is. Therefore, I would suggest that the members ask for delegated authority specifically to include whatever highway work conditions are required in the consent. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that then. Thanks. Any further comments?
Presumably somebody could propose that.
Yeah, okay. I'll propose it. Delegated authority on
I'll say
highways issues, yeah. We'll
I
include
don't
that.
think we've got a problem with the applicant in this case, but
I don't know. Okay. No further comments? So we'll go to the recommendation. It's a difficult one, this, because we can approve, but it still has to go to the Secretary of State as a departure from the local plan. So I'll move approval subject to the conditions and the delegated authority. Is that seconded?
Thank you, Chair. Just take your votes, please. For, against, abstention. Councillor Afasola.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ambia.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgen.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Farouk.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
Not voting.
Thank you. Councillor Hanif.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mead.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Steer.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
That's carried. So planning we've agreed to the recommendation that goes forward to the Secretary of State. Okay. I'd like to say we finished tonight, but we're not. We got another one. Danny's turn.
Good evening, members. So this item, Frank, if you've got the presentation. So this, before Frank puts the presentation up, this comes round pretty much every year. It's a statutory requirement of the council to publish our performance on infrastructure funding and what we've captured in terms of funding, what we've spent it on. And so we're pretty much bang on target in terms of our requirements published before the end of the year. So the item before you is seeking your approval that this can be published. So the report itself is fairly factual. I won't go into the details too much, but this first slide is a summary of the main findings. So we've got 4.4 million collected historically so far that is waiting to be spent. It's allocated to various departments. In the last financial year, we've collected just over 1 million in terms of 106 contributions. And in the same period, we've spent just over 700,000. Just to emphasize, the money we've collected is not the same as we're spending. It's what we're spending is what we've collected from even earlier years. So if we go on to the next slide, Frank. So this is a summary of all the 106 contributions agreed in the last financial year and where it's been allocated to in terms of the various departments. So officers have worked really hard, and as well as officers members, when these applications have come before you at DM committee and you've agreed to grant permission. So in total, there's 11 million worth of funding that we've managed to secure as a council in the last financial year. Next slide, Frank. And this is a summary of how much we've agreed in previous years. So you can see it as a comparison. And the total amount agreed in the last financial year is significantly higher than previous years. And the next line below that is the amount we've received. So sometimes we agree Section 106 agreements, but doesn't always mean that we collect that because it's dependent on the developer developing out their scheme. And as you know, we've historically, not just us, all councils have had an issue with developers not being able to start their developments once permission has been agreed. And the last line is how much we've spent. And so I think if you follow the years, we've got better at spending in the last few years than in previous years. And the last slide I've got to show you is just a graph that shows the same information, but in a tabular format. So you can see how much has been collected and how much we've spent since 2017. I'm happy to take any questions and comments members have.
Questions? Yes, I think it was Francis first and Ambler.
Yeah, but what's not covered in that is what has been developed and has not paid the Section 106 yet and is awaiting collection.
Sorry, if you can repeat that again, Councillor.
So what's not covered in what you've just given us is where a development has taken place and the 106 has not yet been collected by the council.
Right, so this only covers the last financial year. So we're only statutory required to cover 2024 to 25. You're probably your comment probably relates to more historic situations. So that there's separate work around that, but this funding statement doesn't cover that at all. It's just covering the last financial year.
It is the historic 106s that haven't come in, which is the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's a separate.
Appreciate it's not in this
document.
report. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor.
Yeah. Is it possible to show the slide, please? Slide. It will be helpful for the, the expenditure, like agreed, the slide presented. Yes, thank you. On the slide you mentioned, you received the amount of spend is lowered what you collected. So what is the, are you going to carry forward those surplus to next, like, why didn't less spend rather than, like, I mean, compared to collection? Because of you don't have a demand, or it goes to council pot for subsidy?
So when we collect 106 contributions, there's a specific reason why it's being collected.
Okay.
For example, there might be a school affected close by that the contribution is paying towards extra classrooms, for instance. Now the school may not go ahead because they're waiting for a wider project to deliver the classroom and extra funding. So there's usually reasons like that why projects don't immediately proceed once we've collected the income.
So what happened? Those surplus money goes to the different sector, allocate to different, or
No, it stays within the council's coffers, so it doesn't go anywhere. But usually, some Section 106s, there is a requirement to pay back the developer if we haven't spent it within a certain amount of time. And so officers are aware of that. And we're not keen on giving back money we've received. So we do keep an eye on that.
And another follow-up question, because we have seen there was this in terms of community center and other parks and parks maintenance council run out of budget. So I'd love to see those surplus money can reallocate to for maintenance of the, like, I mean, community space, like, parks. And because whenever we ask for the council, they said they don't have enough budget to maintain the playground and equipment. So any sort of money, if we can save from Section 106, can reinvest or reallocate to for community and park maintenance and develop, like, play equipment maintenance, it will be very useful for helpful for people well-being. And because we are thinking, we are declaring about Marmot town and child-friendly town. So I can see I experienced a couple of things whenever I approached them. The thing is, council doesn't have enough money to focus on the priority, like social housing and this sort of thing. So I would appreciate if we can increase those monies and reallocate for the playing equipment maintenance, etc. Thank you.
That's what they do with the money, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there's strict rules around how the money we collected is spent, and the applicant would be rightly annoyed with the council if we've collected money from them and spent it in a different way. Stephen will tell us that they could seek legal action against us if we did that.
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, sorry. The money we receive has to be relevant to the development that's been permitted. So an example was given earlier, it wasn't 106 monies, but about the Pelican Crossing. Well, it's too far removed from the development and its impact. And 106 monies can only be demanded in the Section 106 agreement if the development creates the planning harm that those 106 monies will then seek to compensate for, such as additional education places, affordable housing, better swings and slides in your open space and so on. And the Section 106 agreements that I obviously deal with, they have to be fairly specific about where the money actually gets spent upon. So sometimes you can say within X distance of the development, a couple of miles or whatever it might be. Depends what it is. Sometimes you'd be even more specific and say, well, it'd be spent at this primary school and this secondary school. So yeah, you can't just change. You can't just unilaterally decide to spend the money on something else if there's demand in a particular area. It has to be used in accordance with what the Section 106 agreement says and within a specified period of time as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So we just note the report, don't we?
And agree that it can be.
Agree that it's published. Okay, you agreed? Just a nod will do. We don't need to take a vote. Okay, thank you very much for that.